Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lexington in Kentucky, and welcome to the Fayette Mall. This was quite a treat to be here. Out of the three malls that I filmed here in the state, back on my trip here in May, this was my favorite. First of all, aesthetics were very nice. Two of the anchors I mentioned before, both the Macy's and the Dillards, they were a treat to see as the architecture was very unique, and obviously, as you're hearing in a minute, they would build different department stores. But overall, out of all, these are really nice. And when I was here, they had plenty of different options to both shop, eat, even like play, as you'll see later on, and we'll get to that. So this is not to the point, and I did end up buying something here. There was a cool little shop local to the area, and due to the fact that I've never been to the state, I did want to get something local, so that was pretty cool that I supported the mall. And to that business, shout out to you. Now, the history on this mall, so it opened up in 1971, officially on April 20th. This was built by the Richard E. Jacobs Company. And when this mall was built, there was another mall in the area called the Turfland Mall, but that mall started to struggle as when the Fayette Mall was built. It was a massive success, and all the shoppers that went to the other mall, they went to this mall. Now, the two original anchor stores to this mall, they were Sears, and it was a Shillatos. Now, that Shillatos, that would later become a Shillatos Reichs, a Lazarus Macy's, and is now the Macy's building. Now, I will say as well that in 1987, a Ben Snyder store came to the mall, and then in 1988, Hess's came to the mall. And that Hess's spot did later become a JCPenney. So that's kind of interesting that for some reason Hess's came to the mall and they didn't want to stick around. I don't know if it's because maybe this market didn't suit well for whatever particular store shopped. I was never at their stores, obviously, as it was before in my time. But it's kind of interesting. And if they would have stayed and they would have, later became, as many of you know, that whole company, it was part of the May Federated merger, so it would have become Macy's Incorporated, and would they have had two Macy's stores here? That I highly doubt, because the Macy's is huge and has everything you would need. But, and maybe it would not become that. Possibly a Bloomingdale's would have came here, or would have been sold in a department store. I don't know, but the fact that it got a JCPenney, and JCPenney, as you know, is doing quite well, I guess odds were in their favor, and to still have three of its anchors as being full-on in department stores definitely became a success. Now, in 1993, they landed another anchor, and that was built as a McAlpin, which, as you guys heard in my Dillard's video, that later became a Dillard's in 1998. So like I mentioned, that's why the Dillard's store looked very nice, because it was not built, as the Dillard. 3 years after that, in 2001, was when its current owners ended up buying the mall, and the current owners, they are CBL Associate Properties, which are based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And they have said to this date, CBL Incorporated, that this is one of their top dozen performing malls in the entire country. And they own, between malls and shopping centers, well over 100. So that is pretty impressive, and that clearly shows these strengths. And if you guys do not know anything about the CBL companies, they don't manage dead malls. For the most part, all the malls they own do very well. So for this mall to stand out of their top dozen just shows the pure strengths and success of this mall. And they have treated this mall very well, as you didn't see any sort of things you would see at typical other struggling malls. Ceiling leaks, lights out, flickering lights, and even vacancies. Right there on your right, that rally house that I assume used to be a different spot, and they filled it with a rally house, which I love rally house, by the way. If you have never shopped there, I strongly suggest it. But in any event, this particular mall did lose one huge anchor spot, as Sears closed in 2013, but it was sold to the mall, so I'd assume Eddie owned this store at one point. And the spot that Sears used to be is now the H&M and the Cheesecake Factory, and that proved another strong sign for this mall, as you would never know there used to be a Sears in this mall. There's no evidence of it, and the fact that they filled that Sears, which I assume used to be a very huge store, as all the Sears I've been to for the most part were very big stores, and the fact that they filled all that, and it's fully retail still, and as well as a restaurant, that is another reason why this mall does so well. You see in malls across the country that Sears stores have been very hard to fill, and department stores in general, and the fact that they filled this one, and you would never know that Sears used to be here, is a sign of strength for this mall and a sign of strength for this area as well. As the total square footage of this mall is 1,184,000 square feet, which that is massive for a mall, but compared to the mall that I was at last week in the Virginia area, that would seem tiny. But any mall that is over 1,000,000 square feet is quite large. Now, COVID lockdown in 2020, of course, it's all shut down for a month, but when it did reopen, nothing really changed. You didn't see too many changes to this mall, and it's still doing well. Now, I will mention that the Apple Store closed at this mall on March 26, 2021. Now, that is kind of strange, as this is a huge college town. If you guys did not know, in the Lexington area, there's one of the largest colleges in the entire United States, so I assume this mall, again, is in a good spot, because the college students, they need clothes, they need snacks, they sometimes come here maybe on their days off, and they hang out with their friends. And the fact the Apple Store left is kind of weird, because college students also need headphones, computers, etc. Now, they did move to another plaza, but it's still kind of interesting, but honestly, if there was an Apple Store here, I have no idea where it was, as it has been filled. Comment down below if you all know where it is, or if you all know why it left. Could have been leasing issue with CBL? I don't know. Now, my overall thoughts of this mall, like I mentioned before, I was here for 2.5 hours, and I could have been here long enough for other malls. I was very impressed with the layout of this mall. All the people that I knew that were working here, they were all very nice. I did mention I did buy something. And overall, this was a very pleasant shopping experience, as some of the spots in this mall, especially the wing from the H&M heading down to the other door, as well as the section going down to the Dillard's and Dick's, I could have spent hours at, and the food court too. I mean, just staring at it is, as you all don't know, just those little details in malls and make me almost sometimes want to spend more time at malls than I do actually shopping. And as I mentioned, multiple times in this video, this mall should be here for years to come, and I strongly do encourage anybody who's in the area to swing down to this mall, even if you just want to get Auntie Anne's pretzel, or you just want a drink, or you need something quick from JCPenney, anything. You will not be disappointed by your visit, or at least I'd be very shocked if you would be. And just enjoy it. Now, as I mentioned before, you can always feel free to comment down in the comments and what your overall thoughts are of this mall, and what you think is going to happen. What's your favorite moments? Do you have a bad experience here? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I have been getting better at responding to comments as well as hearting them, so always feel free. Now, I'm going to stop talking from music the rest of the video. If you all do enjoy this video, make sure to hit like, comment, and of course, stay tuned for what I have next. Here, I got plenty more videos from the Cincinnati trip, as well as I just mentioned. I have plenty of videos from the DC trip that I filmed, which was just last week, so stay tuned for that. Live here from the beautiful state of Kentucky, Alex Weinheimer's out. As I mentioned before, make sure to hit like, comment, and of course, and subscribe to the channel here for more content, and I will talk to you all real soon. For now, enjoy the rest of the video.
nights are bright with you. Everything feels right. Make the nights so bright with you. Everything feels right. Neon lights make the nights so bright with you. Everything feels right.